Good evening, friends. Let us be still together for a moment. If two simple words could quiet fear, loosen every burden, and open you to a presence that lives you, would you speak them? We have not come to get something, but to let something be. To let the infinite I announce itself as our very being. I am is not the personal me trying to be spiritual. It is the impersonal, living presence expressing as you and as me. When this is felt, not merely said, prayer changes from asking to awareness, from reaching out to resting in. Then we discover there are not two powers competing in our lives, but one presence, one life, one I. As we turn inward, quietly, we are practicing availability, no pleading, no resistance. Just the recognition the I that I am is the I that God is. From here, supply is seen as the outflow of the One, health as the harmony of the One, relationships as the love of the One meeting itself. If this speaks to your heart, like the video, comment a symbolic 111 to affirm one presence, one power, one I, and subscribe so we can walk this path together. Now, shall we take the next step and see what begins to happen when I am understands itself as you? First, we come to the root identity. Who is the I that says, I am? Not the personal name, not the history or the biography, not the bundle of fears and hopes that parades before the world. The I that is God announces itself as your very awareness. It does not become you, it is the you that is before thought, before choice, before the word, arises. In that recognition, the sense of a second self thins like mist under the morning sun. We have been trained to think of two gods somewhere, me somewhere else, and a bridge of prayer between. But the infinite does not commute. The I within you is the I of all. When consciousness turns from the outer to the inner and is still, you begin to feel an impersonal peace that is not owned. It is not my peace or your peace, it is peace being itself. In that atmosphere, the personal self relaxes its grip, and the true identity begins to witness life unfolding of itself. I can of mine own self do nothing is not defeat, it is description. The little self can do nothing because there is no separate little self to accomplish anything. All doing is the outflow of I am, the one life acting as infinite variety. The musician, the healer, the parent, the artisan, each is a transparency for the same I, and the greater the transparency, the brighter the light. Identity then is not a possession, it is a letting. When pain or lack presents itself, the personal I rushes to fix, to argue, to resist. The spiritual I does not contend, it witnesses. It rests in the fact that I am is the only self present, and therefore there are not two minds battling, not two powers colliding. As this is felt, not asserted, but felt, the picture begins to lose its authority. You find yourself answering not from fear, but from the quiet certainty that there is only one I here, appearing as intelligence, order, and tenderness. This I is not improved by our efforts, nor diminished by our failures. It is whole where we seem broken, pure where we seem compromised, free where we seem bound. Identity becomes a function of grace rather than achievement. You discover you are not moving toward God. God is revealing as the very place you stand. The old habit of self-judgment slackens, because the judge and the judge dissolve in the same light. Practice, then, is a turning and a listening, a willingness to let the ancient voice speak within. I am that I am. Stay with that until the pronoun softens and the presence announces itself as the only actor, the only hearer, the only life in the room. Let relationships be the meeting of I with I, work the flow of I serving I, the body the temple where I maintains its own harmony. What we had called identity expands, without effort, into universality, and what we had called me becomes a window through which the infinite I looks upon its own creation, recognizing every face as my face, every need as my fullness revealing itself, every task as my action fulfilled, every breath as my life breathing. Until the word I is felt as universal, indivisible presence. When presence is known even faintly, the person is unseated from the throne. The mask remains, roles, names, addresses, but the mask is not mistaken for the wearer. The personal mind, with its plans and anxieties, relaxes in the felt assurance of an animating life that needs no managing. Presence over person means we cease trying to polish the costume and become a clean transparency for light. No self-glorification, no self-condemnation, only beholding. The question shifts from, how do I get God to help me? To, how do I stay out of the way so God may reveal itself? The response is always the same: be still, yield witness. In ordinary moments this looks like pausing before speaking, letting the inner hush settle, and noticing wisdom form without strain. Decisions that once felt heavy become lighter because the sense of a separate chooser is thinning. The presence that is love acts as clarity, as timing, as restraint, as courage. Sometimes it moves us forward, sometimes it holds us back, and sometimes it closes our lips altogether. Person would force, presence unfolds. Person hunts for outcomes, presence abides in rightness. Intuition ceases to be a private talent and is recognized as universal knowing functioning where it is needed. When disturbance appears, fear, anger, lack, the reflex to fix softens. Instead of attacking the picture, we rest in the fact that there are not two powers contending here. Presence is the one atmosphere, and in that atmosphere discord cannot sustain itself. This is not passive denial, it is active non-resistance, the strength of consent to the real. Pride and shame lose their hooks because both belong to a personal self-image that is no longer governing. We become willing to be nothing personally so the all may be everything. And paradoxically, competence increases, creativity flowers, and efficiency appears because friction has been removed. In relationship, presence over person means we stop using one another to complete our stories. We listen beneath words for the same life, speaking an answer from that level. Correction becomes gentle, advocacy becomes natural, and forgiveness is not a moral effort but a recognition only I is here, meeting itself. Where personality would argue, presence beholds. Where personality would defend, presence rests. Where personality would persuade, presence reveals. This shift is felt as a softening in the body, a widening of attention, a warmth that includes rather than divides, and from that warmth the appropriate word, or the eloquent silence, arrives of itself. In work, presence over person frees us from the strain of self-authorship. Skill is honored and practice kept, yet the door is surrendered. We show up prepared and consenting, and the work seems to do itself through us with an ease no self will can produce. In the body, care is taken, remedies may be used, yet reliance is on the life that maintains its own temple. Even in a waiting room, breath by breath, we return to the simple recognition of one presence, and anxiety yields to an uncaused assurance. In prayer, this is the end of trying to use God, and the beginning of letting God use us, sitting, listening, moving only when moved, while name and story become light garments and the felt reality is the silent, luminous being that lives us from this hush, the insight of one presence. No two powers, ceases to be doctrine and becomes experience. We are not affirming light to chase away darkness, we are resting in light and discovering that darkness was never a something. Be still and know that I am God is not a plea for rescue, it is the description of a universe in which only I is acting, only I is present, only I is power. The sense of an opposing force, whether called disease, lack, hatred, or danger, is the ancient habit of believing in a selfhood apart from God. When presence is recognized, that belief has nothing to stand on, and the picture loses authority, not by combat but by revelation. Consider how reflexively we grant reality to two good events, bad events, helpful people, hurtful people, body cooperating, body betraying. This is the hypnosis of appearances. The infinite way is not a program to make the bad become good. It is awakening to the one in which the pairs of opposites dissolve as mist. Judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment, means look through the picture to the fact God is the only cause, the only law, the only substance, the only activity. Where would a second power enter if all space is filled with one? Practically, this knowing is quiet and unhurried. A bill arrives, the breath catches, the mind calculates. Pause, return to the altar within. There is no power of lack opposed to the power of supply. There is only the one appearing as form when and where needed. You may still write the check, make the call, take the step, but it is done in the atmosphere of I, not as a duel with a threat. A diagnosis comes, and fear narrates a future. Pause. Feel for the presence that is life itself, maintaining its own harmony. Remedies may be used, counsel may be taken, yet reliance is not divided. There is not God and treatment as two powers, but God alone as the animating wholeness in which the picture is reinterpreted. In world events, noise rises, conflict, headlines, outrage. Without denying responsibility or the call to action, the practitioner refuses to grant reality to a second power named evil. not a sentimental gloss, but a steadfast beholding only one presence, and therefore no law to sustain cruelty, no mind to invent it, no power to enforce it. Action taken from this altitude is clean, timely, precise, because it is not reaction, it is the movement of I answering its own appearance. Temptation will come to use truth as a weapon. I will say there is only one until this problem goes away. That is still recognition of two. The way is gentler, withdraw sensation from the picture, rest as awareness, let the fact of one announce itself. Often, in the midst of silence, an inward smile rises, uncaused. That is the sign the burden has shifted. Grace is operating, and what needs doing will be done through you without strain. This principle softens relationships as well. If there are not two powers, there are not two separate centers of will wrestling for control. There is one love recognizing itself. Correction may be required, boundaries may be set, but not to defeat an enemy, rather to witness order reappearing where disorder seemed to be. Even self-correction grows kind, because the other we had been fighting, our temper, our past, our weakness, is seen as a picture without law, dissolved in the beholding of the one, until the habit of arguing with appearances gives way to the habit of silently acknowledging the unopposed presence and watching life answer to that acknowledgement. This is prayer as awarenessy, not words reaching upward, but awareness resting as itself, alert, receptive, unanxious. Petition fades because there is nothing outside to persuade, manipulation ends because there is nothing to manipulate. We sit or stand or walk, and let the inner hush form. In that hush, no problem is carried in by the mind. We do not present a case. We enter the secret place for God alone, not for effects. To the personal sense this seems useless. To the awakened sense it is the only usefulness, because it is communion rather than conversation, beholding rather than begging. Often a few gentle reminders open the door. I can of mine own self do nothing. Be still. Here I am. And then the words are sealed. Silence becomes our prayer, listening becomes our devotion. We are not listening for sentences, but for a quality, a quickening, a soft warmth, the inner yes, without language. When that comes, thought taking stops. We are not trying to make something happen, we are consenting to what is. Desire simplifies until only one desire remains, God as God, presence as presence. If any other motive is discovered, health, supply, vindication, we lay it at the altar and return to the simple willingness to know God aright. In this way, treatment is redefined. We do not treat a person, a body, a bank account, a nation. We acknowledge one. We refuse to outline outcomes because the infinite does not work from our blueprints. We release images, arguments, and emotional urgency. The so-called condition is not opposed, it is outshone by recognition. This is not positive thinking, it is the end of thinking as a tool to change appearances. It is the recognition that awareness, left to be itself, is harmony revealing its own forms, timing, law, and correction where needed. Practice becomes rhythmic, brief turnings many times a day. Before a call, a meeting, a post, a meal, pause, withdraw inward. 5 breaths of consent, a simple acknowledgement, one presence here. Then we proceed, but carrying silence like an atmosphere. Set periods help morning, a few minutes at noon, evening. Not long vigils unless grace holds you there, but faithful touch points where the inner ear is trained, where the habit of inner reaching gives way to the ease of inner resting. Between periods, we refuse to rehearse fears, and if we catch ourselves rehearsing, we smile and return. Gratitude in this way is not a list of benefits. It is the tone of recognition. It thanks not for things, but for being. Forgiveness is not an effortful virtue. It is the light in which the image of offender and offended grows transparent. We may still set boundaries, speak directly, take wise steps, but the heart remains unhooked because it abides in the fact of one. Even self-correction becomes gentle, noticed, yielded, released, without drama, the mind returning again to the presence that corrects without criticism. When asked to pray for another, we will not try to send power or ideas. We quietly enter the secret place and behold where the appearance claims an opposite. If a word forms, it is simple, peace, life, here, and then silence again. We do not check results. We refuse the curiosity that would turn communion into a test. We seal the prayer and go about our work, letting fruits appear in their season. And if nothing seems to move outwardly, we keep faith with the inner certainty that awareness, left free, is forever being itself, our part only to return and listen, to stop taking thought, to let presence announce itself as the very life of all that concerns us, to live with an inner ear more ready than the tongue, the heart leaning toward that soundless assurance where prayer is no longer doing but being. This is prayer as awareness, not words reaching upward, but awareness resting as itself, alert, receptive, unanxious. Petition fades because there is nothing outside to persuade. Manipulation ends because there is nothing to manipulate. We sit or stand or walk, and let the inner hush form. In that hush, no problem is carried in by the mind. We do not present a case. We enter the secret place for God alone, not for effects. To the personal sense, this seems useless. To the awakened sense, it is the only usefulness, because it is communion rather than conversation, beholding rather than begging. Often a few gentle reminders open the door. I can of mine own self do nothing. Be still, here I am. And then the words are sealed. Silence becomes our prayer, listening becomes our devotion. We are not listening for sentences, but for a quality, a quickening, a soft warmth, the inner yes, without language. When that comes, thought-taking stops. We are not trying to make something happen, we are consenting to what is. Desire simplifies until only one desire remains: God as God, presence as presence. If any other motive is discovered, health, supply, vindication, we lay it at the altar and return to the simple willingness to know God aright. In this way, treatment is redefined. We do not treat a person, a body, a bank account, a nation. We acknowledge one. We refuse to outline outcomes because the infinite does not work from our blueprints. We release images, arguments, and emotional urgency. The so-called condition is not opposed, it is outshone by recognition. This is not positive thinking. It is the end of thinking as a tool to change appearances. It is the recognition that awareness, left to be itself, is harmony revealing its own forms, timing, law, and correction where needed. Practice becomes rhythmic, brief turnings many times a day. Before a call, a meeting, a post, a meal, pause, withdraw inward. 5 breaths of consent. A simple acknowledgement, one presence here. Then we proceed, but carrying silence like an atmosphere. Set periods help: morning, a few minutes at noon, evening. Not long vigils, unless grace holds you there, but faithful touch points where the inner ear is trained, where the habit of inner reaching gives way to the ease of inner resting. Between periods, we refuse to rehearse fears, and if we catch ourselves rehearsing, we smile and return. Gratitude in this way is not a list of benefits, it is the tone of recognition. It thanks not for things but for being. Forgiveness is not an effortful virtue, it is the light in which the image of offender and offended grows transparent. We may still set boundaries, speak directly, take wise steps, but the heart remains unhooked because it abides in the fact of one. Even self-correction becomes gentle, noticed, yielded, released, without drama, the mind returning again to the presence that corrects without criticism. When asked to pray for another, we will not try to send power or ideas. We quietly enter the secret place, and behold, where the appearance claims an opposite. If a word forms, it is simple: peace, life, here, and then silence again. We do not check results. We refuse the curiosity that would turn communion into a test. We seal the prayer and go about our work, letting fruits appear in their season. And if nothing seems to move outwardly, we keep faith with the inner certainty that awareness, left free, is forever being itself. Our part only to return and listen, to stop taking thought, to let presence announce itself as the very life of all that concerns us, to live with an inner ear more ready than the tongue, the heart leaning toward that soundless assurance where prayer is no longer doing, but being. Here grace begins to reveal itself as the way life moves, unearned, unoutlined, unresisted. Grace is not a special favor granted for good behavior. It is the normal activity of God once the personal will steps aside. My grace is sufficient for thee is not a promise of future rescue, it is a statement of present sufficiency. When prayer relaxes into being, the compulsion to plan, to plead, to predict loosens, and a quiet rhythm becomes noticeable. Things meet us at the point of need, ideas arrive, hold doors open without our pushing, and those that are not ours close without offense. Grace is sufficiency, not surplus, flow, not storage, timing, not tension. In supply, grace appears as form-fitting function. Instead of reaching outward to accumulate, we turn inward to recognize source and let form present itself as needed. Sometimes it looks like money, sometimes like a new skill, sometimes like a friend at the right hour, sometimes like the disappearance of a supposed need. Seek ye first the kingdom. Proves practical. We do not go to God for things, we go to God for God, and things find their proper places as byproducts of alignment. The anxiety of tomorrow diminishes because grace is never a warehouse, it is daily bread. We honor our duties, send the invoice, make the call, yet we refuse the inner narrative of scarcity. In that atmosphere, wise action is evident and outcomes land without strain. In health, grace is the harmony of life maintaining its own temple. We do not fix a body, we abide in the presence that is wholeness, allowing it to interpret the picture. Means may be used as they are given: rest, treatment, counsel. But reliance is not divided, for there are not two powers sustaining us. Often the first evidence of grace in the body is not a dramatic change, but a soft peace that ends panic. Breath deepens, fear releases, and the body responds to the removal of psychic friction. We stop talking to symptoms as enemies and behold the one life being itself here, the law of being asserting order where disorder had been assumed. Grace's harmony shows in relationships and activity as an unobtrusive rightness. The right words come, or the impulse to be silent. The right partner appears, or an old tie loosens kindly. Work organizes itself. What once took force now answers to consent. I, if I be lifted up, will draw all. Becomes an observable law. Lift attention to I, and what belongs is drawn. What does not belong drifts away without drama. This is not indifference, it is reverence for the one presence arranging its universe. Even the calendar begins to feel guided. Delays prove protective, acceleration proves timely, and missed chances reveal themselves as mercies. The signs of grace are subtle but sure: ease without laziness, sufficiency without hoarding, generosity without calculation, a gentle humor that disarms fear, gratitude not tied to outcomes. We notice we are no longer trying to prove anything, no longer rehearsing worst cases, no longer tempted to make spiritual statements perform on command. We let results be God's business and keep to ours, dwelling in the secret place, refusing to take thought, consenting to be used. When nothing seems to be happening outwardly, we do not break faith. We sit again, listen again, and find the inward assurance brightening, the edges of urgency rounding off, the next step appearing with that unmistakable simplicity that marks the movement of grace, carrying us as rest, provision, and right relation into a way of living we could call practice. Silence and availability. Silence is consent, the gentle laying down of our project, so awareness may be itself without our commentary. Not the tight-lipped quiet of effort, but a spacious ease in which the nervous system loosens and the inner ear becomes alert. We sit, or stand, or walk slowly and allow the mental dust to settle. No visualization, no outlining, no bargaining. A few tender pointers may open the door. Here I am, be still, I am, and then we rest. Thought will try to resume management. We neither fight nor follow it. We let it pass like birds across a wide sky and keep to the sky. Availability is the companion of silence. Here I am. Use me. It is willingness rather than will, readiness rather than rush. We drop the insistence on preference and timing and become interruptible by God. Availability may ask us to pick up the phone, to apologize, to wait when every cell wants to push, to speak when habit would hide. It keeps the heart unarmored so that guidance can be felt as a light pressure, a clean impulse, a simple clarity that requires no argument. Set a gentle rhythm. On waking, before the hand reaches for the world, let it reach inward. 3 minutes of consent. At midday, a brief return, breath deepening, shoulders softening, the wordless recognition of one. In the evening, a few minutes more, letting the residue of the day dissolve in presence. Between these many micro-pauses, before a call, before sending, before entering a room. Eyes open, life proceeding, yet inwardly you touch the secret place and move on. This is practicing the presence. Not a special hour, but a new climate for all hours. When distraction or dryness comes, we do not dramatize. A wandering mind is simply a tired mind. We escort it back with kindness. If nothing happens, we do not measure. Presence is not an event, it is the fact. Our part is faithfulness, not fireworks. If agitation spikes, shorten the period and increase the number of brief returns. Let the body help unclench the jaw, soften the belly, lengthen the exhale. The body's ease is an ally to the heart's listening. Let language be light. A line of scripture, A sacred name, a simple here is enough. Use it to turn, then let it go. Journaling may clarify motives, but close the notebook and sit in the wordless. Music may open the door, step through, and then let the music fall away. The aim is not a mood, but availability to the one that is prior to mood. Bring practice into work. Begin a task with a breath and the inward prayer, use me. Ask, what would you have happen here? Then move in the given light, without hurry, without slackness. Pause when confusion rises, clarity will either form or the day will ask you to leave it for later. In conversation, listen beneath words for life speaking and answer from that depth. When correction is required, let it be clean, not loaded. When celebration is due, let gratitude rise without claim. Guard the gates of attention tenderly. Reduce needless noise. Touch news lightly and prayerfully. Spend time in nature where the nervous system remembers its native cadence. Keep a simple order in your space. Burdened rooms burden minds. Practice includes rest, honest food, honest sleep, honest boundaries. These are not substitutes for spirit. They are the humane conditions in which inner listening is easier. Availability includes obedience. If a nudge persists, write, stop, give, reconcile, do the next right small thing. If no nudge comes, do the next ordinary thing in peace. Either way, keep the line clear by returning often, by letting the heart say again, I am here, by allowing silence to be the first atmosphere and the last word within which the day conducts itself.